Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning into the podcast today. I'm your host, Chris Wren, and I do want to start by thanking absolutely everyone who was able to attend XDS this past September, including our incredible sponsors, speakers, attendees. Overall, I think the event was extremely successful this year, just based on the positive feedback that we've received from those who were there. I'd say my only regret was not being able to let everyone in who did want to attend. We had many folks on the wait list and far more than we were able to accommodate, unfortunately, given our capacity issue or limitations. However, that does go to show that XDS is ready for growth. So there may be some exciting news on that front in the months to come. I do also want to thank everyone who expressed their support in the new platform I announced recently called XDS Spark. Spark is essentially an online marketplace that connects buyers and sellers, and it will become the one true source of information for external development year-round. It is an idea I've toyed with for a long time, and now that XDS is truly independent, we have the runway to support this community in new and exciting ways. We're working hard behind the scenes on Spark as we speak, and more details will be coming available very soon. And now I'd like to roll into one of the top sessions from the recent XDS event. We were very, very fortunate to have Molly Mason-Boule join us as a keynote speaker. Molly is COO with Riot Games, formerly VP of Production and Operations with Electronic Arts. Molly helped to mature the practice of external development during her time at EA, and on a personal note, was a friend and mentor to me during my time there. Also, got to say huge thanks to Mr. Joe Nickolls, VP of Sumo Digital, for hosting this discussion with Molly in true Joe charismatic fashion. Now I bring you an XDS Fireside Chat with keynote speaker Molly Mason-Boule.
Welcome home.
Why, thank you. It's beautiful
home,
to
right?
be back.
Yeah.
This is home. LA is also home.
LA home and Vancouver home.
Yep. I would like to actually point out that Joe is available for some timeshare sales later in the suit. I felt wildly underdressed when I showed up today and saw the dapper Nickolls.
Yeah, we talked. I'm really going for the CEO of United Airlines look.
I think he needs the wings. He needs the wings.
Yeah, she suggested I put some wings on so it could really kind of look the part.
But like, how much do we love Joe? Let's just give Joe a quick round.
Oh, thank you. So like I said, Molly and I have known each other for a very long time. In fact, I like to say I knew Molly before she was cool and had a hyphenated name.
That's true.
When she was Molly Mason.
That's right.
But I first met Molly when I was working at EA. And Molly was busy bringing balance to the force because it was kind of in disarray. And guess what you were fixing? Outsourcing, because outsourcing was not really a thing back then. Outsourcing was just ordering a pizza. So
that's funny.
A little bigger than that, right? I guess it is the original outsource.
There was no outsourcing when I got to EA, but you know, it was a time where scale was, EA was at a different size back then. I joined in 2004, as you know, and we had to get from Gen 2 to Gen 3, and the scale of that jump was just really massive, particularly for computer graphics.
Right.
So, I can't take all the credit because, to be fair, everything requires a team. We don't do anything alone in life, and certainly not at work. So there was so many thought partners that just kind of led us to understand that what I call geo-diverse teaming was something we needed to do.
Right.
So we went down that road.
Yeah.
That difficult, fun
road.
Crazy road where we traveled the world and met people whose companies were a card table.
Right.
Quite literally.
And a shower curtain.
Quite literally back then.
But before you came in and fixed everything, you were a person and had a life and did other things, right?
Yeah, I'm old. Yeah, so, for the record.
So tell us about pre-video game days. Tell me your story. Where are you from? How'd you get here? Who let you?
Yeah, that's that. We have an hour, yeah? No. So I was at EA for 18 years. There's a lot of familiar faces in this crowd today, so it's nice to see my old EA peeps, and now there's some Rioters here, so shout out to the Rioters. Big fist bump to all of you. Woo, woo. But prior to games, I was a producer in visual effects and animation for film and television and commercials and music videos. And I worked in advertising in New York at Gray, San Francisco and New York, the kind of technology practice as a broadcast producer. Started my career working in audio. So I worked for a very prolific composer who wrote for film and television. He was generous and wonderful, and I just learned a ton from him. And kind of that's where I fell in love with animation. Prior to that, I did go to art school before I got an MBA, so I kind of have both sides in my brain, but I was a professional photographer for record labels in LA. And that was a fascinating thing to jump out of college into doing. My sister was an executive at Atlantic Records, and she sort of shoved my book in front of a bunch of people. So it was nepotism all the way, go LA. But I did photograph a lot of fascinating people. Like I photographed Courtney Love when she was launching Hole, and just a lot of people. So I still am an artist at heart.
Yeah.
But yeah, so during
Pretty
the audio,
boring life.
Yeah, pretty boring. So
Like she really hasn't done much at all.
during the audio days, Nickelodeon would come in, and I really just loved the process of putting sound to animation. And DreamWorks was coming in, DreamWorks Animation at the time, they were called PDI, and they were making a movie called Ants, and then embarking on Shrek. So they would come in, and this producer just said, like, hey, do you want to come work for me? And I said, yes, I do. And then I just jumped into the world of visual effects and animation for about 12 years. Production company side, ad agencies for commercials. It was at DreamWorks doing visual effects for live action and then feature animation. And yeah, so production was kind of my thing. So the joke about EA is I got recruited at a memorial service of an executive that had been at, true story, at DreamWorks, and he was like, so what are you doing now? And he recruited my husband and then myself, and we came to the magic land called Vancouver and started my journey with EA. It's very hard to get into games from visual effects and animation or film and TV. Very difficult transition. I got called Film Girl by the QA folks for like 2 years. I think they were trying to scare me away, but I fell in love with games, so it didn't work. But yeah, so really the computer graphics part of my life is really, I would say, the engine that's really driven the majority of my career. I've never really looked at what's the level or the role or the this or the that. I am in love with the medium. Yeah.
And so, you come from a very creative background, no question there. So, I'm not going to say it was easier because you didn't come from like accounting and then find your way into something else.
The MBA came later.
Right,
yeah.
right. I remember when you took that because you were taking it while you were working.
That was insane.
Yeah, that was nuts.
If I knew what I was getting into, but I'm not sure I was. But it's been such an enriching decision that I made to go back to school.
So when you actually physically came in and started doing the games, is it what you thought it was going to be? Were you doing what you thought you were going to do? After getting recruited Fireside at a funeral to start that journey.
True story.
Is it what you thought? Is it, is you doing the things that you thought you were going to do when you got to games?
That's a great question. I knew when I joined games, I started on game teams. I was hired to take Knockout Kings and make it fight night. That was the first game team that I was on. And when I saw how the art was made, I was perplexed. Because you come from film and TV and the creative really drives. And in gaming, engineering it's a big deal in visual effects and animation, but in a different way. So what the transition looked like for me was becoming much more technically savvy. To understand the process at a deeper level. So I would think that was the hardest part of making the move into gaming. And over time, it was clear that we didn't have some of the technical things we needed to take advantage of the rendering power of the Gen 3 hardware. And then began my sort of central odyssey, Joe.
Right. Right. Well,
Yes.
EA wasn't built in a day, right? So.
Yeah, it was quite an undertaking.
And when you think about that journey, I mean, there had to be huge roadblocks and huge resistance. Who is this person? Film girl's here, and she's going to start doing stuff, and it's like,
pretty much, yeah.
I've been called worse, but like film girl's an okay.
I've been called worse too, but film girl was kind of endearing at this time.
Right, and so you come in there and you're saying, hey, I've got a different way of doing things. You probably ran into some pretty stiff resistance because, well, that's the way we do things here, right?
Yes, for sure. And I think that's true. Change is just a difficult process for humans in general. And then you put a bunch of inertia and success, because let's face it, all the companies you work for and the companies I've worked for and Joe's worked for, we've been lucky to enjoy some success, right? And so what comes with success is sort of a comfort zone that you know what you're doing.
Yeah.
And when you're in that space, it's hard to say, maybe we should be jumping over here and doing this other thing. So there was a tremendous amount of resistance.
Yeah, I'll bet.
All the way through, quite frankly. And I think that's just the function of human beings and comfort zones and stretching and taking on things that might not look like what you're used to.
And it's that resistance, too, I think, that helps you kind of course correct and go, oh, wait a second, maybe this isn't what I thought it should be.
Absolutely.
Right? Because sometimes they say, that's not working, I don't want to do that. And then they talk about why, and it's something you hadn't considered, right?
I think friction is a massive driver. And I was talking to my current boss, who's the founder of, one of the two founders of Riot. His name is Mark Merrill. He's a brilliant guy. I was talking to Mark the other day about, hey, maybe I'm the counterpoint. I found myself in that role quite a bit over the course of my professional life. Maybe it's just I'm curious, I don't know, but I definitely take the counterpoint a lot. And I think it's that friction that drives creative people to outcomes, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So based on the path that you took,
yeah,
are there things that you could think about that maybe helped in the transition to games, and maybe some stuff that helped that hurt in the transition to games?
Yeah, I'll give one that's like not transferable and unrealistic maybe, but I moved to another country for the job. So there's like a different commitment level.
Right.
When you're on a work visa, you're just kind of like, and here I am in Canada. So, it was like a don't look back moment. I left film and TV and really a life that I knew, and just decided I'm going to commit myself to learning this medium. I loved games, so that didn't hurt, right? The fact that I already enjoyed video games was a plus. But I think that that made it easy, in addition to the generosity of other people. So there was so much generosity when I joined EA. There was resistance, sure, and difficult moments and change, but there was generosity there as well, and some phenomenal mentors that I just really, that were very giving, and so it just made it easier to transition.
Is that, what was that one of the ways that was make it easier for you to make that decision to move to another country? Because that's a big deal, even though Canada and the US are pretty similar, but that's still a big deal.
Yeah, it was a big deal. I underestimated. There's something about naive optimism, right? I think I underestimated. It's like, it's right above Seattle. How different can it be? Well, number one, they say my name correctly.
Right.
So we're already winning when the accent aigu is recognized,
right,
and people can kind of pronounce your name. That's always a plus. But I think I had that naive optimism, like, this is going to be an adventure. I'm going to meet new people. I'm going to learn new things. So I just kind of went into it with that mindset, right, quite honestly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So now I want to shift gears a little bit and talk about some of the things that you're proud of and things that have happened along the way. Have you ever pulled out a win at the last minute?
We all have we not? Right. I think that's the definition of being in production.
Right. Yeah, change that one line of code. Oh.
Yeah, let's pull out the win at the last minute is kind of the definition of the games business, I think. Sure, of course. I think it's a team effort, of course. And so any kind of production is never a singular effort. It's about the team of people. Pulling out wins at the last minute, I'll tell one fun story.
Sure.
My last employer had a summit that they would do every year. And it was a big affair, and it would be in a different country every time, and Vancouver or Sweden or whatever, they would move it around. And I had an applied research team that was working on something kind of unusual, which is like hardware and software solutions for the creative process to be better, which sounds odd, but it was a super fun group of people. And we had built some facial performance capture stuff and a really phenomenal rig, and we demoed. They wanted us to demo, but it was really last minute ask, and that's pretty technically complex to just pull out of the sky.
Right.
But we
engineers
did it.
love last minute.
Yes, of course. But we did it in a hotel room and whipped it out at the event, and it was just magic because you could see the promise of the tech, and you could see the emotional performance of the animation. It was a beautiful moment. So, I mean, that's one that's kind of a micro thing, but obviously I just think every production just has speed bump after speed bump, and when you kind of drag it across the launch line, it's an exciting moment. I've been proud to work on every game I've touched, without any question at all. Yeah, definitely.
What was the hardest thing that you took on that worked out?
Building EA Create was crazy. Like what? Like who would? Why?
So what does EA Create for those?
Yeah. So shout to the Create peeps in the room if you're out there. I saw a couple sweatshirts last night. Yes, there's a couple claps over there. Now led by the marvelous Genevieve King. So EA Create was 3 people in a cubicle, and then became, like, I think at its peak about 1,700 people in 11 locations, plus a value web of vendors around the world that was making kind of everything you see and hear on screen in the games. It was bananas. Like, who would do that?
Right.
But it was really that Gen 3 transition that drove it, because lighting needed to actually move to a future state, and we kind of had to take some different approaches to get there. So it was just the adventure of a lifetime to be an entrepreneur, write a one-page document on a problem that and I would recommend that to all of you. If you see a problem in your company and you know you can solve it, step up. Like, step up and propose it. The worst that can happen to you is they're going to say no.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So I proposed it, and John Schappert was like, yeah, go do that. That sounds like a very good idea. So that odyssey began. So it was the hardest thing I've ever done, bar none. No question. The most rewarding, too. Yeah.
One of the things I think that people have misconceptions or beliefs about something when you say, hey, we've just created a massive organization that outsources and finds great talent, and some people go, oh, well, that means that you're just going to homogenize everything. It's all going to look the same. Yep. It's going to be cookie cutter, and that wasn't the case.
No, that wasn't the case at all. But it's understandable from a game team perspective, though.
Right.
It's understandable, but at the same time, there was just some technical things we needed to leverage our size on. So yeah, I mean, it's easy for game teams to feel that way, and they're also charged with getting it done. So when you take all the maker community and you create an identity around that's outside the game team, you're delivering the full game area. That's a different model.
Yeah.
And it's not for everyone. And you know what? It was for a particular era, and it served a particular purpose.
Right.
And we're in a different era with different purposes today.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You have to be in that flexible mindset.
Yeah. I mean.
Yeah.
I think back. I mean, we've all done. Some of you in the crowd too have done time on FIFA.
I did my time.
I know. We used to say, have you been on the 4-letter F word?
The 4-letter F word.
4-letter F word.
Everybody.
I've been in there. But when you realize, I think, not everyone, but I think a lot of people would be surprised how much goes into a product like that.
Oh, it's incredible.
Like how many teams, how many kits, how many away kits, how many third kits, how many, everything. And that's where something at scale that really is needed, because they pump one out every year.
And the substructure, the technical substructure that has to parse all that and actually call all that up and combine it all properly. I mean, it's a miraculous, marvelous thing.
Yeah.
But console games are one thing. I do want to just talk about the shift to PC games for me with Riot. Mm-hmm. I've been in the console world this whole time. I show up at Riot and it's like I just die playing Valorant. I just die. It's like, here's a keyboard. It's like, what do I do? I'm like a babe in the woods. But it's fun because there's high-end graphics cards, and I'm always like, I'm always kind of got my eye on the computer graphics, let's be honest, even though I'm in a COO role, which I love, by the way. Just love being at Riot.
I remember when we first started the company that I'm with, and we all got these massive laptops, and they weigh like 7 or 8 pounds, and they've got like a blower and a clutch and a Hemi, and they weigh. Oh my God, they sound like a hair you're taking off.
Yeah.
But what they can do, and like I kind of say same with me. I've been in PC and console, but most console, and just seeing the level of detail and the level of creativity and finesse that goes into this new PC world. The PC world's always been there, but sometimes when you're in another company, you miss that, right? And you come back out and you go, oh, right? But yeah, totally.
It's a great transition, though.
Yeah. Okay, let's shift gears a little bit again. Tell me about some of the role models and mentors that you have had that maybe have helped you. It could be industry or not.
Yeah, there's so many. I guess I'll talk about Moira Dang. So I don't know if there's people in this room who know Moira. She was definitely one of those generous people when I joined gaming.
Absolutely.
One of those generous people. So I show up in Canada. I'm very California. I sat in meetings and kind of didn't understand the culture, and the film girl thing was happening, and she was just so wonderful. I got so lucky to fall into her orbit. She would situationally coach me after every meeting. Who does that?
Right.
She would pull me aside and say, loved this. When he said this, your face did that.
Yep.
She was just the most marvelous coach I've ever had in my life. I owe a lot of, just a massive debt of gratitude to Moira Dang. Another mentor was at DreamWorks. His name is George Merkert, and George was my boss there. He was an executive producer of live-action visual effects films. He's still a producer today. George taught me how to read a script and break it down and figure out how we're going to actually make it happen. I learned everything from George. I owe George a lot, and he's just a wonderful, generous, huge, bigger-than-life character. But he would send me home a script to read. Here you go. Break down the effects, please. And I didn't know how to do that. He took a bet on me. So George, I would say, was a big influence early on, and then Moira was just so generous at EA to really just continue to kind of inspire me and just tell me you're going to be fine in the games business. And I needed to hear that at the time. And she really believed in me. And, if you have a boss who isn't generous, go look for that generous boss as fast as you can.
Yes.
And Moira was just, I was with her 7 years with her as my manager. And I think I really owe a lot of my style and success to her.
Yeah.
So yay, Moira. She's here in Vancouver somewhere.
Yeah.
Her daughter's on FIFA.
No. Oh, of course she is.
Who knows?
We're all on FIFA, aren't we?
Yeah.
Yeah, Moira, I can completely support the Moira thing. Because,
She's wonderful.
Moira is this kind of very special person that, when I was working, she was like overseeing a lot of operations and whatnot. And my team and I would just be typical, me and my team, running around like a bunch of idiots. And she would just very calmly say, Joe.
She's very calm.
That's why we're doing this.
Yes.
Okay? And she was just, 100%.
So Moira was the COO of EA at one point, and just a star.
Yeah.
A star human being and a star operator.
Yep.
And to look up to her as an aspiring COO and to know that I've reached that milestone in my own career, I just owe a lot to Moira. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Are there some areas of game development now that you think are either the most exciting or the most scary? Like, anything that comes.
I just think how fast tech's moving. It's moving very fast. It's always moved fast. I'm in a different role now, so I'm kind of not right up against it the way that I have been for all these years. That makes me anxious a little. You can see my hands because I'm not as close to it. I think that technology is moving rapidly, and it will change how we work, I think, for the better. I don't think we need to fear that there isn't a place for human expression and talent. This is a creative medium. AI is not going to come and do anything in games that we can't harness in a positive direction. I really believe that, and I think the opportunity that it affords us is to focus on what makes it better to be a player, harness that stuff for the power of good, make the workflows everything a creator wants it to be. I think that that's how we have to kind of see it. But it's scary at the same time because it's very overwhelming. Every company is in a very different place on their technical journey. So it's like, how much do you leapfrog? How much do you try and catch yourself up? And what are you catching up to? Those are very individual questions that each company is probably going to have to get introspective and answer at this point. So scary, but I'd say exciting, honestly.
Yeah, I think a lot of people fear the unknown.
Yeah.
But, the world that we live in now, I mean, AI is not going to just go away tomorrow because, Congress votes it out, right? It's just not going to happen, right? So it's here. It's how we use it, how we are going to use it going forward.
Yeah.
Pretty sure Skynet won't be next year. I think we'll be okay for a while. But it's all in how you use it. And certainly the art world. I mean, the art world is, I think, the most, initially impacted by it right now. But I think it's just a way of harnessing the power of it, because you still need human beings to make that creation, right?
Well, no question. And I think it's not something to be afraid of.
No.
It's something to lean into. It's something to understand more. And I don't think it's something to fear. It's something to get curious about. I think that's going to be the best path forward.
Yeah.
And P.S., it's been here.
Yeah.
This is not a signal of change. That signal of change occurred 20 years ago or more. And in our industry, certainly procedural workflows have been around in visual effects. I saw them for the first time in the 90s when Houdini was introduced at DreamWorks, actually. So in reality, we're just on a spectrum of maybe accelerated change in this area, but it's nothing to be afraid of.
Yeah. Charge into it, knowing because everyone's going to charge into it together.
Charging forward is the only path.
Yeah, totally.
We're going this way.
So let's talk a little bit about diversity, equity, and inclusion. Tell me what that, when I say the DEI word, what does that mean to you? And how does that impact your day-to-day at work?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. So, DEI is a very personal journey for everyone, I think. Yeah. And I think the best mindset is one of self-acceptance and then allyship towards other people, including white men, P.S. And I used to say that a lot at the beginning of sort of the recent wave of DEI spotlight. It's like exclusion is also real for people who maybe have been in a position of privilege.
Right.
So there's a balance to all of it, I think. Certainly the advice I got in the 90s in advertising, there was a couple things that happened to me as a young person, and this very senior female executive gave me coaching that today I'm sure she wouldn't give me. So I think it's a lifelong journey with how you're going to interact with your own identity, what companies are doing or not doing. I think everyone is going to have to find their own way on what fits for them. I did and am proud of standing up the women's ERG at EA called Women's Ultimate Team with Waylon Tong, who's just another totally inspirational woman. She's a SVP of Finance at EA down in Redwood Shores. She and I just went on kind of a journey with that. We really wanted to advocate for women. We did a women's study at EA to just really understand, how are women feeling? How can we make this a better place for women to grow their careers? At Riot, it's been nothing but supportive.
Right.
Been there a year and a half. There's a very strong identity that they call them RIGs, Riot Interest Groups, that the RIGs have there. And I do think every company's kind of leaned into it in their own way. As a woman myself, and as a kind of a Gen Xer coming out on the age side of things, I've seen the spectrum, for sure. I've been in the workplace when it just wasn't, DEI was not a word.
Right.
It just was not. And so it's kind of refreshing to see how much we're embracing everybody's identities now.
Well,
not perfect, of course, long way to go, but it's nice to see.
I remember the Women's Ultimate group.
Yeah. Team, Joe.
Team. Well, this is the funny story, because when I went to California, I was working at Maxis. Yeah. And I was asked to be an ambassador for the Women's Ultimate Team. And this is how out of touch I was.
Could you see a better ambassador? I think the answer is no.
Yeah. 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 And I literally was questioning, said, why do you want me on the Ultimate Team? I don't even like Frisbee. Literally, I'm not
I
trying to make a
love
joke. I
Frisbee.
thought it was the ultimate team. And they went, no, it's more than that. And I did look into it.
Thankfully.
Yeah, thankfully I figured that part out. But as recent as this summer, I went to the UK for Sumo, and I actually asked if I could give a talk. And I very glibly shot out a line saying, "This is what I wanted to call it. I'm gonna be funny." And so I sent a line out what I thought the talk should be called. Not only did they approve it, they went with it, and they published it within the studio.
Oh boy!
And my talk was called "Old White Guy Talks About Women in the Workplace." And
fantastic! I
they
was
went
paid
with
to see
it.
that.
But you know what? It was really awesome, and we've had such an easy ride. White guys, us, guys like me have had a super easy ride, and we were blind to so many things. And it's learning and going, wow, I really did used to be like that or do that.
I mean, the awareness is great. I think allyship is a huge role that we can all play. I also think that, it takes courage too.
Yep.
To normalize saying to someone, hey, maybe next time you could say it a different way, or whatever it is. It takes a lot of courage to be that person. And so I think that's the courage we all have to muster, regardless of what our identity orientations are. Is that courage, right? The courage to just sort of really let your freak flag fly, be yourself. Professional at all times, of course, but be yourself. And I also think the bar can't change. Like, we're all super talented individuals in this industry. And so keep your bar high, That's the other aspect of it.
And you're still making video games or whatever you're making. Still making products. It's still a job and whatnot, right? And I think that's the one thing that we discovered is on the journey. It's like we stand for a lot of things. We support a lot of things. We don't talk about a lot of things. But at the end of the day, you still have to get the job done. And they should not be separate. They should just flow. Yes.
And I think, one thing I love about Riot is the mission about making it better to be a player.
Yes.
At the end of the day, this entire room of people, the companies we work for, if you happen to be a geodiverse team member or a partner in this room, we are all doing it for the players. That's who we're doing this for. We're not doing it for ourselves, and we're players too. It's players for players. We're not doing this for ourselves. We're doing this for the people who love what we're giving them out into the world. And so we have to remember that too. I mean, DEI is hugely important at work. There is no question. But we also have to keep our eye on the players as well.
I'm going to call out that we are crushing our pace. Are we not crushing our pace?
We are. There's a little clock down here.
We have a little clock that's telling us when we're talking too long and what's going on, and we are crushing it.
Chris knew this would occur, though.
Give us your outlook on external development for the games industry. What are you seeing?
I think we've sort of hinted at it throughout this chat. I really think leaning into technology, don't be afraid of it. That's the frontier that if I were an external developer who's increasingly a huge part of the game team, think about within your own company how all of this tech affects what you do, and jump into it. Jump into it as fast and hard as you can, and make yourselves as creative and efficient as you can, and you'll just continue to be phenomenal partners. So I think the future of external development, the scale is not going away. Players are expecting more and more and more and more, and we have to keep up with that. And so that means that we all have to figure out what some really great systems look like to do that. So I think the future of external development gets bigger, not smaller. Yeah, truly.
I think it's important too that for people that have an external development service that they offer. When I get asked, people say, well, "What should I do?" And I'd always say the same thing. Do some research on the company you're about to ask to do business with.
For sure.
Find out what they do, right? If I get someone that says, "Joe, we're going to increase your retention rate for the game that we don't know that you're making," I'm probably not going to call you back.
Probably not.
But do a little bit of research and talk about it. So.
Agreed. Yeah.
All right. Well, please join me in thanking Molly Mason-Boule for this conversation.
Thank you. Thank you.